Get anybody's. Sorry about that. Heather. Yes, I consent to being recorded. Okay. Okay, we're all here. We're all ready. Okay. All right, we'll call today's Beaver Boardwalk Community Oversight Committee meeting to order. Committee, is there any changes to the agenda for today? Okay, seeing no one, I could get a motion to adopt the agenda. Jan, all those in favor? Oh, that's okay. Okay, the agenda is adopted. So meeting minutes, there's no meeting minutes to adopt today. We'll adopt the February meeting and today's meeting at the March 9th meeting. So that brings us to our one and only action item today. Review of administrative report, Boardwalk Rehabilitation Project Amendment. Turning it over to you, Ms. Wade.
I have over to Hans. We've got some background information I think he probably wants to speak to first. And then Hans, are you zoomed in or do you need to share the screen?
Can you share the screen? I can zoom in. I thought maybe not needed. Okay, thanks. All right, so yeah, just so a little bit of history, but you've seen a draft of a report. So this report, we want to bring it to council's attention on this coming Tuesday, which is a regular meeting. If we can slot it in, they can make decisions on a regular meeting for council. The timeline, of course, is crunching because if otherwise it would be 2 weeks from now. That will be mid-March. And then it would be late to start, let's say 2 weeks after that, mobilization and do work, and then we're at the end of March already. So this the situation that we have as follows. We have the boardwalk work, the rehabilitation work that was tendered out, let's say in April, May last year. That was done based on a municipal stimulus plan grant program. Grant from the province that we got. It went through council's decision process, of course, with in the end 4 sections being determined to be done by this 300 grant. So when the tender was done, the tender was supposed to, let's say, the work to be done in the winter of December starting November. At that moment, we did not have the weather conditions. We had a late start of the good frost. So in December already, we saw it would not happen, let's say at that moment. It would start in January. So January coming back, mid-January-ish. The contractor and us were on site. The water is not there anymore. So that did not give the opportunity to build up the locations that to mobilize to. So basically building ice bridges or ice paths to get to the 4 sections. At that moment, it was of course scratching our heads and like, okay, now we have to decide and see what is possible. So that takes some time to go back to our grant funder, our consultant AE, so that's Associated Environmental Services, AEP to make sure what the options are there. And of course, our contractor. So back and forth brought us to last week when was it last week that we met with each other, gave you guys the updates in the Beaver Boardwalk Oversight Committee. The last time we saw each other, that we were close to sorting out scenarios. So now the scenarios we are bringing to council, but knowing of course that the Beaver Boardwalk Oversight Committee is the first and foremost stakeholder to get input from. So what you have in front of you is a draft that we made, let's say over the weekend, discussed it earlier this week. Now it's Wednesday. So tomorrow it's going to be reviewed by the senior leadership team and then of course our CAO to be brought into the package on Friday. So when you see those options, one is basically already, let's say, kiboshed. That's option number 3. So just to quickly go through that one. Option number 3 was to utilize grant funding to basically take it away from the contractor that we have to do the boardwalk work and then utilize that grant or a portion of it towards the bridge and the ramp project. But that's yesterday evening in council's meeting postponed to tender out again. So basically, the grant funds for that project are, we can use them till the end of 2023. So basically next winter, maybe even in January, February, but at least that project is now basically on hold. So that doesn't help us to say, let's terminate a portion or the whole contract with this contractor that I have for the Beaver Boardwalk. Let's put that money towards that other project. So number 3 option is basically kiboshed by that. I see Jan already a question.
Yeah, is that okay?
So you want
Yes.
questions while we go, or?
Yeah, let's do that, because then at least everybody, yeah, let's do that.
I don't want to confuse the situation. I do find that all of these number signs all over all of our work. It's confusing after what.
Oh.
How much money are we talking about here?
So 300 grand is the grant funding. So $300,000 is the grant total. We had 4 sections, and I know that I made today again a little insertion of the 4 sections. So that's, let's say, my draft number 4. The 4 sections that we have, and I see one that everybody has that in front of them now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can share on the screen.
Number 1 section, if we talk about the number 1 section that was part of the grant funding and the work to be done by the contractor, is that red indicated line over there. That's at first 20 meters access from Sutherland. So that's that section. That's section number 1. That section can be reached from the hard land, the upland basically, and work your way to do that section. Section number 2 is, maybe you can pull it up, but I'm not sure if you have it on there. Yeah, so section number 2 is the section that comes from the path and then runs along the Beaver Lodge, the dam, basically coming from that pathway next to the small bridge. So there's that small bridge, and then the boardwalk starts, and then basically you walk on that little lower pond next to the Beaver Dam. That's section number 2. That's not possible to get on there with equipment. There's no ice under the little layer of ice that we have right now. There's not enough ice. There's no water underneath. We cannot pump any water. The water is out of all the sections. Basically, the water is gone. So that section number 2 is a total wash to do that this year. And of course, you never know if beavers don't return or whatever. We don't get the water level back. It's doubtful how that can be done maybe in the future. But yeah, nobody knows the future, but that's hard. Number 3 and 4. 3 is from the dock in the lake, then towards the Reimer Drive. So the first section from the dock, then basically along the shoreline towards that first little intersection. And then when you walk further, you get basically onto Reimer Drive. That's number 3. Number 4 is the section that is on the path, the trail. So the basically the old trail that we have, which is the boardwalk section that lays on top of that trail section. So that's number 1, 2, 3, and 4 if I talk about that. So, yeah.
Sorry, is there a deadline for spending this grant?
Yeah, so the grant itself was supposed to be done last December.
Right.
And then the extensions we have, the extension we have is for June to finish off the reporting and the work. So that's the extension we have. So basically finish the work in the winter time, because when we connected with them in December, in November, December, we said, we cannot get this work done in 2021. We have to extend. That extension is there. The extension will not be for a second time, let's say to December, to say, okay, start the winter with your work. Basically, because there's no guarantee that that work can be done anyways. So the grant funder says, June, gotta have it done, this work on your Beaver Boardwalk.
Doug has a question.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
Has any of the 300,000 been spent? And the second part of my question was, it's the whole of that 300,000 that disappears at the end of June if the work's not done. Is that correct?
So at the moment, we haven't spent, let's say, $1. We have, of course, the contractor signed contract.
Okay,
Although, let's say there's no invoice yet. Whatever is left over of the 300 goes back to the grant funder. So if we do a portion of the work only, basically we then frustrate the contractor for a bit. The remainder goes back to the grant funder. There
So
is
it's-
option number 4, scenario number 4 in the report, which I will explain what that means. So basically what I said, scenario number 3, to tie this in somehow to the bridge project is not possible because the bridge project itself is there. Thank you, Jan. That's very visual. Option number 4, let's go to that one. Option number 4 means a portion or the whole grant, don't utilize it for this work. Tell the contractor he's out of luck. That means one big item, of course, you have to get out of a contract that you have signed. So the amount of dollars that's going to cost, the settlement, has got to come from basically reserve funding. It's municipal funding. Because the grant funder won't say, oh, you have to get out of a contract that's costing you $100,000. Give me $200,000 back and we'll call it a day. That's not going to happen. That's on the town. If that's a portion that you have still left over and the grant funder says, if you're going to use it for another project that you have on the shelf right now that you can swap in to use dollars for, you have the opportunity to submit that. So though they say you don't get another extension on this boardwalk work, you get the opportunity, if you're fast and you have a shelf ready project that fits the criteria of the grant, and you can do it and do it fast, then you might submit it and you might be successful. No guarantee until you submit it. No shelf ready project is there right now for council to say swap it in, but we could go to council and say that's a scenario. Do you want to entertain that? It's got to be a rush. We have to find something that we have or not or create. The grant funder still has to approve it for the dollars that are left over.
Can we go to Doug for a second?
Yeah.
Good, Doug? Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, Doug.
For your scenario 4, what is the financial penalty in the contract with Fine Line if you were to terminate it?
So we don't have that figured out at this moment. So we haven't asked, hey, if you're doing one section or nothing, what is the penalty? Let's say your max penalty is 300, your minimum penalty is 0. Don't expect either of those. Penalties are most of the time the profit that can be made with section first of the cost that already are made. So material like piles, that's something you're going to make anyways. And your profit that he could have made off it is most of the time also part of your penalty. So when we talk about that, rough numbers, 2/3 of your amount is gone. That's
Substantial.
rough. That's substantial.
But it's not defined in the contract, though. It would have to be civilly settled somehow.
That's right. Yeah, it's a settlement. Yeah, correct.
And Hans, just to be clear, sorry.
Yeah,
Just to be clear for scenario 4, we don't currently have any shovel-ready projects to be done at the boardwalk area. Diana might have something, and infrastructure might have something. But we wouldn't, under the timelines that we would need to build to hit the deadline of June, even scenario 4, if we're just focusing on the Maxwell Lake area, is no longer a viable option because we have to get our engineering, get our environmental, get a plan together, and we just don't have the time for that.
correct.
I was,
So even the tower, like how quick did you get that tower up?
Yeah, so since a project like that
Yeah.
requires AEP approval.
Yeah.
So we have to submit that separately. So we don't have a timeline guarantee. We know that, let's say fast, 3-4 months-ish. Yeah, we basically know that that's, let's say, almost a certain not viable option.
So the reason for that, Hans, is that a new Water Act approval is required for that tower because of the way that the gravel drains into the wetland, correct?
Yeah.
And that perhaps just something that came to mind last night is that this group should maybe now start looking at how do we now want to put in another water act application? So there's kind of a maintenance one that we have, and then one for if we do need to remove something, and then go in down the road and put back something else, because that's really limiting to us right now. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there.
Has he
Yeah.
bought the steel? Has he bought the screw piles? Can you kind of redirect him to replace some of this with wooden posts? Like
So,
the easier parts?
yeah, so the screw piles are bought. Some of them can be used for other projects. That's true. So he's flexible in that sense. The wood products will come locally, so they're not bought yet. So that's a 2-week timeline. So portion of the materials is bought, portion is not yet. Nevertheless, it's going to be a let's say a whole situation to get out of a contract for sure. So
I have a couple other questions.
Yeah.
From I have Doug and then Tom. Go ahead, Doug.
I just wanted to ask about the ice there, as that's kind of driving a lot of this discussion. Is the limitation the ice thickness, or is the limitation the lack of water underneath the ice?
So basically, the ice thickness is the limitation because nowhere is the ice thick enough to get onto with light equipment, but there's no water anywhere to pump and make the ice thicker. So what you normally do is when they get to site and they don't have enough ice thickness, in this case, let's say the average ice thickness is about 12 inches. To get to 18 inches and over, you pump water on, you make your ice bridge or your ice way to get somewhere else. That's not there. The biggest issue is that in pond number 2, in that section, to get there, you need a lot of water. He has to get over the berm. You have to build up a lot.
And the 18 inches, is that, whose specification is that?
That's specification from them. Basically, they prefer even more, of course. So another way of course, doing things is with rig mats, which is out of scope. We connected with our environmental associated environmental. They double checked it with AEP. So if we would build a pathway to the other side of the lake, which would run along the lake, they have to cross that Beaver channel. That has to be built up even more, and basically the outcome is you utilize cloth, eco cloth under your rig mats, all the way from one shore to the other shore, including a bigger buildup of material to cross that channel. The one thing, of course, as soon as you start doing rig mats, even your materials more and heavier than your equipment for driving the piles, because that's, let's say, medium equipment. Rig mats, now you're talking about heavy equipment. So that's why we're looking into the other scenarios, 1 and 2, of course. Maybe I'm going to do that first to see, okay, what are the 1 and 2 scenario and what does that do for our options?
I think Tom had a question.
Yeah, we'll go to
Okay,
Tom
yeah.
before we move on.
Okay, thanks.
Now, the tower isn't in the wetland itself, or I'm under that impression. Is it the same approval as if it were in, and are we talking the same sort of timeline?
Yeah, thank you. So the tower was first, of course, in the wetland because it was built in the water. There is an opportunity, of course, to build a similar platform on stilts outside the water line, but you are still in the runoff towards the wetland. So it still requires an AEP approval specifically on that project to be able to build, even if it's 1 or 2 meters or 3 meters off the shoreline, it still impacts the wetland and it needs a full approval. A new full approval that we don't have. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Doug has a question again. Go ahead, Doug.
Sorry, just relevant to that last one there. What I wanted to ask Hans was, I don't want to get into the weeds of equipment choice, but you guys did kind of review the equipment being used by the contractor and make sure there was not a lighter grade of equipment that could be used, whether they purchase or subcontract or whatever they have to do. Like a little skid steer, for example, is what you typically use or something like this.
Yeah, so the equipment to be used to drive the piles, and pull the piles out. I don't know the top of my head anymore what the equipment is, but it's
Oh, Chad knows.
I'm gonna-
Flipping his
Chad?
hand.
Go ahead, Chad.
It's essentially just like a mini hoe with like an auger style pile driver attachment on it. It's a small machine. It's not much bigger than a skid steer.
Okay,
Thanks,
yeah.
Chad.
I just want to make sure.
Sorry, just before, are you good then, Doug, or did you have a follow-up?
I'm just, it's just that ice thickness that I'm thinking about. I don't have a lot of expertise in that, but really it's driving the whole discussion, right? The ice thickness, the ice is not thick enough. And this isn't really thick equipment or
I don't think
heavy.
it's our place to question.
Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts too. That's a criteria that's set by the contractor. If they're not comfortable taking their equipment on there, I don't think we can force them to.
Yeah. I suppose I could leave my question then at where I was going was, you guys did kind of challenge them a bit and say, do you have other equipment you could get that would be more suitable? And just as long as that question had been kind of reviewed with them, that's kind of where I just wanted to go with that one.
Yeah, so yes, that has been, of course, the conversation already with the awarding of the contract, for sure. And in this case, especially when, of course, the channel to get to the other side is our biggest issue, the Beaver channel over there. That has been a discussion in the field as well. So is there other equipment? What's the other opportunities? And basically, it's more and more, of course, a experience that, let's say, ice thickness and winters are not harsh enough to do a lot of work. And in this case, yeah, we did have that conversation and had breaking conversation with each other.
We'll go to Beth before we
Yeah.
move on, if that's okay.
I probably know the answer to this, but I just want to make it clear. I'm assuming the equipment is too heavy and he can't make ice on the section from the bridge to the outdoor classroom. As an option, could he work that or no? Like, is that the same ice issue?
That's the same ice issue.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, so when we go then to scenario 1 and scenario 2. So scenario 1 that you see on the computer over there means section number 1 is then going to be done as part of the original on the contract that we have right now. But there's the option to go to the left, basically go eastwards and work our way further in on that section. So right now it's not been determined as part of section 1, it's only the first 20 meters. Going to the left would mean that you cross basically the bigger water body over there next to the Beaver, where the Beaver Boardwalk crosses. So you go to the blue section. The blue section portion is in a, let's say, rough earth shape, but it becomes better at the end of blue, and the black section is not in bad shape. But utilizing the piles over there, you see, of course, that the yellow line is more indicated as the continuation of the trail connectivity, basically. Because right now the trail connectivity stops at Sutherland, then you have to go over the parking lot and the private grounds of the both the Maxwell Lake apartments and the condominium complex over there. So it's kind of our continuation of trail network. But it means that instead of number 2 section that we talked about, or number 4 section, the piles are going to be utilized to do this section. So basically continuation of that boardwalk area.
Sorry, I don't want to, but
Go ahead.
I'm a little bit unclear on what I heard Heather say earlier. I thought I heard someone say that we have no projects on the go that we can accomplish by June. So was that a mistake? Are scenario 1 and 2, are those projects that we could do by June?
This is refocusing
So I'm
the
just,
work over there. So not other projects that they somewhere else in town.
Okay.
Some other projects for the grant. The grant says, if you want to do this, it's part of the Beaver Boardwalk at the moment. So we can do refocusing to stay away from section number 2, stay away from section number 3, to extend this.
Okay, so you're saying that scenario 1 and 2 look to be something that we can do by June?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify that, the
Yes.
town's capital projects that we have right now, nothing at this point that even I'm aware of, and you guys said the same thing, is ready to the point where it could be completed by June to make use of this, this grant. So it's basically down to like option 3 is out because of the decision council made last night. Option 4 is kind of out because there is nothing that could take its place that's ready to be completed by June. So we're basically looking at scenario 1 and scenario 2 are the only viable options right now.
Correct. Yeah. So the dollar amount, of course, you have to combine this with number 2 scenario, because finishing this complete section off will not get us to 300. But if we go first to this option or scenario number 2, this means reaching this section is from the other side. So basically the contractor has to deploy from the bike park, utilize the trail over there to get his equipment in, out, and runs into the boardwalk that's built, let's say a couple of years ago, of course, on top of the gravel path until you hit that intersection. Because the intersection over there, maybe you can indicate where the intersection is, that between red and blue.
I'm using the wrong mouse. There's a lot going on back there.
That's
Right
the
here.
intersection of the boardwalk. That's basically where we said, okay, we're gonna do the red section only, that section number, we call that number 4. But to get there, you basically have to tell the contractor, lift up everything that you run into from the bike park. It's about, did we say 80 meters? 80 meters, lift it up, put it to the side, because most of that is on sleepers, it's not on piles. Put it to the side, you can drive further on, because that's old town trail, and then start working on your section number 3, the red line, take it out, put the piles in, work your way backwards towards the bike park. And then whenever you run out of piles, run out of money, we have to put down the that section of boardwalk, of course, because everybody knows that's a swampy section. That's why the boardwalk was built on sleepers in that area. So it's basically coming from the other side, only do section 3, because section 4, the red line, the section next to the lake is out, because even to get there, you have to, let's say, cross through the wetland, or you basically have to work from the ice, because the trees and stuff like that. So that was a section to be done from the ice, which is not possible. So those 2 scenarios, scenario 1 and 2, will add up to 300K again. So basically refocusing the work, finish 2 sections, ditch the other 2 sections, but do some extra work in section number 1, and of course section number, we call that section number 4. You have to do something because you had to get there.
So Hans, just to clarify, so theoretically now that 3 is out and 4 is out, when you
Sorry.
do scenario,
Okay, yeah,
scenario 3 and 4 are out. Are scenario 1 and 2 really combinable for just one big option and then alternatively dividable? Or are you saying they are 2 options? You're not getting both ever?
you're gonna get both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you're gonna get both. Let's say in meters, do you really get all the way to the path that goes to the bridge? That's going to be a little bit of a puzzle with the contractor. Does he get there? Pile-wise, yes. He's going to have anywhere between 15 and 30 piles left over, because the other sections are not going to be done. So piles, there's enough piles. Wood has to be, let's say, part of this deployment anyways. Does it get all the way to that side, let's say dollar-wise or time-wise? Most likely, yes, but that's a scramble. And that's why we say to council to take the decision on Tuesday, so we have the month of March until, let's say, freeze up finishes in April, in mid-April.
I'm gonna go to Doug if that's okay.
Yeah.
Doug?
This may be a really stupid question, so sorry, but can we use a fire hose or something just to bring water from kind of the residential area down? It's a couple hundred meters. Sorry, if that's a really stupid question.
I did ask, I said to our fire chief, like, I need your truck a couple of times or a hose. Yeah, that was kiboshed pretty fast. So not sure if was a silly question, but no, that's not possible.
Wait, why? Sorry, I
Yeah.
don't understand why.
Like, did Mac just say, no, you can't have my truck? Like, did he understand the gravity of the situation and that if we just ask for a hose and a firefighter to come over, hook it up to some hydrant somewhere? I know Dale's just cringing listening to me talk about this, but like, why is it impossible? Because if all of a sudden that is an option, that needs to go to council. If that's a real option, because if all it means is we get the whole thing done, if we just build ourselves ice bridges.
Okay, but there's some consideration to that too. And
Oh, for
I,
sure.
like, are we gonna get the weather? We may have the water, but we may not
Yeah.
have weather. Like next week is all supposed to be back to warm.
So we'll let Mr. Von Claveren go ahead and
Yeah,
respond.
so basically it was a, let's say, pretty fast discussion, of course, to bring, let's say, our fire hydrant water over there. You bring other water from the fire hydrants even into the natural area, so I'm not even sure if that would be considered an option for environmental. But that's why it was a fast and short conversation that would not be entertained.
So to me, there's a couple challenges there. One's time. If it was December,
Mhm.
that could maybe be considered, but because it's March, by the time they get the ice bridge built, it's likely gonna be too close to the end of season. But also to reading the report, my understanding is that they need the thickness of ice, but the ice also needs to be floating on water. It can't be suspended, right? And that's one of the issues right now is
Right,
the water's gone from under the ice, so the ice is technically suspended, so they need way thicker than they would normally if it was floating on the water. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah, there are sections that you have to bring water under the ice, which apparently is gone anyway, so where does it go straight after you build it? So, yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
And that was, let's say, in all the ponds, so we were surprised, basically it was where the beavers are, and everybody sees that, of course. The lake has the same. The upper pond, when Happy Creek streams into, there's that upper pond basically with a dam. Also, there is no water under there. And the lower, where the section number 2 was, that lower pond and the pond next to it as well, both have the same. That basically
If there's no water, then we don't have to worry about the water act.
So
Yes.
before I go to Kevin, I'm just gonna ask the question I think is probably everybody's thinking, do we know where the water is going or where it went?
Is it that damn blow that happened in autumn?
It's the one blow, but on the other hand, the other 2 areas, upper stream and lower stream, there would not be a reason why that is gone. If that's only the big dam where it broke. So
No
we don't know.
possibility that the pipeline has anything to do with it?
Don't know. I don't know. I'm looking in different directions.
Like they didn't divert water or anything in their work?
Not that I know of, and how would they drain it from there? It's just basically all the water that's been there is frozen, and then there's nothing underneath that anymore to be extra frozen or whatever. Like there was only one spot, let's say between the bridge and the lake, where there was a little bit of clear water when we augered a hole, and that was about 10-11 inches of clear water. All the other water is dark, muddy straight away, or it's hollow underneath.
Kevin?
Yeah, I just had to unmute myself. Yeah, so I guess, I mean, you already looked at all these different options, but I mean, would there not maybe be an opportunity to reactivate the section of Boardwalk that goes between the outdoor classroom to the bridge along that section, like not on the creek side, but on the, what do you want to call the vegetation side? I mean, it strikes me as an area where it seems like it could probably support equipment, and maybe you could reactivate that section that's actually sinking into the lake, and then, capture scenario 1, catch that area, and then have a reactivated kind of more contiguous functional section of Boardwalk that is kind of, I think people would like to have that one back. And then the other question was just if you're going ahead with scenario 2, that section out to the boardwalk through the bike park, just to be really wary of, spring breakup and any heavy equipment chewing up bike trails will probably piss off a lot of mountain bikers. So having some rehab for their bike trails in the plan in case it chews up their trail for some reason. I'm not familiar with that trail area, so.
I think he's referring to a town trail, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a
Yeah,
town
the access to the woods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So yeah, the town trail has been used by let's say skid steer activities as well to build. I think it was the last portion of.
Okay, right. Well,
So they would not be on the association's trails, they would be on town trails.
Yeah.
okay, well, never mind.
Come all the way from Rob Road.
Yeah, no, good question.
Okay, I thought it was.
Sorry, and the first one, maybe Heather, can you pull up number 1 scenario?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking that you meant, Kevin, a section number 1.
Yeah, I think so.
You can
Well,
just
I thought
see
he
it to
was
the
talking-
right.
I thought he was, sorry, I thought you were talking about scenario 3,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
section along.
Yeah,
the-
sorry,
along the
yeah,
lake
yeah,
shore
that-
that's closed.
Oh, okay.
Right here.
Yeah, that creek,
Up, Heather? I think it's up.
which one?
That section. Scenario.
Yeah, right there, from the dock going kind of northeast. Is that the piece you're talking about, Kevin?
No, sorry. The one that goes right by the creek when you're going from the bridge that everybody hates to the outdoor classroom. That section
Yeah,
that
scroll down,
Diana.
Oh, sorry, okay.
that section right there.
Yep, sorry.
Yeah, that section. That's right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, to be honest, that will be one of the harder issues to deal with as well. Like, because that again, it's next to the fallen down creek, of course. It's on a very wet section, so that most likely will require rig mats in the future when that's going to be done. If it's going to be done with piles. So at this moment, that would not be a scenario that this contractor can entertain. This contractor would really leapfrog forward in the section that he takes out and back up backwards.
Great.
So,
Okay.
yeah. Well, good question.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I'll just go to Beth before we move on.
Yeah, I talked to Rick Bonner about this section. He said this was one of the problematic sections. Because when they were building it, they didn't hit refusal, where mostly everywhere else, the piles would hit solid ground to refusal. So he knew that this section would need some work in the future.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's, because it looks nice, but this was the one section he thought. Plus the very east end of the lake and that little bit toward the lower tower, that crescent there.
Yeah.
Those are the 3 sections that he said. Everything else, he said the classroom hit refusal really soon, like really shallow. That's why it's still there, really solid. Everything else was, reasonable. But this is the one section he knew they would have trouble in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Monclava?
So, yeah, basically coming down to what we see in front of us. The biggest question will be, do we entertain the amendment, which is possible within the work scope of the contractor, within the budget from the grant, within hopefully the time frame to get the work done, to do scenario 1 and scenario 2 together. And basically get it done, get it over with, and this is one portion, one grant that's going to be utilized to do that. The one question that we had put in there was because the first section, the first 20 meters, has a 1.5 meter width over there. You could suggest that the rest towards the bridge, so basically when he takes a left turn and goes behind the Maxwell Lake Apartments, to keep that as a trail connectivity 1.5 meters. It's a consideration. This is the time to do that. This group can also say, no, let's keep it 1.2 meters because it's so much part of the Beaver Boardwalk Beth experienced the slow down and stuff like that. So that's a consideration that we should make down here to say, okay, even though section 1, that the red section is supposed to be 1.5 meters, but if he takes a left turn, then it will continue with 1.2 meters or 1.5. The same consideration is on the other side in scenario 2, since it's a continuous trail section. Basically, it's a town trail on top of a town trail. There is that same consideration to go 1.5 meters or stay what it is right now, rebuild what we have right now as a 1.2 meter wide section. Both items should be coming from this committee as well to say, this is our preference, council. Let's do this or the other thing. So that's why I put it over there.
Doug, you have a question?
And this is 100% funded by the MSP grant. It's not like that other project that had an 80-20% split.
No, this is a 100%.
Okay, and is there any risk that basically scenario 1 and 2 are completing sections 1 and 2, but with some additional scope to kind of make up the difference? Is there any risk that after that's done and then you go to get your grant compensation, they may turn you down because it's not in that original grant application, or was it suitably vague enough to kind of give you that leeway?
It was suitably weak enough or vague enough, but also the grant funding advisor that we communicate with suggests this as well. Like,
Okay,
can you change your scope? Can you do something with that? So they are
Okay.
working with us to do this.
thank you.
No?
So just to be clear, this, sorry, people on the screen, but this section that you're talking about, that would have to be removed to help get equipment in
Mhm.
and then put back
Yeah.
after the red section is totally redone. When you put it back, you're putting it back exactly the same it was, or you're making improvements along the way?
Making improvements along the way.
Yeah.
So, and I'm doing that, making improvements, because let's say the first section in blue, you could back up and put piles over there as well, as long as it's needed. Because the first section, everybody knows, it has a big water flow underneath it, ice build up in certain times of the year. So yes, it would be improvement. But basically, yeah, it's got to be the same as it was or better.
So if I may?
Yep.
You're asking us basically if we think it's a good idea to recommend doing 1 and 2. And along with that is a decision between 1.2 and 1.5.
Yes,
That's basically what you're asking us, right?
bingo.
Okay.
I honestly would stay, sorry. Yeah, with the existing widths, just because you don't really know how much dollars you're gonna end up with, and I'd rather see the completed project than having to stop partway. So I would just stay with your original plans here, and then especially in the boardwalk here, that is part of the intent to experience of the boardwalk, to slow people down and have them aware and looking around. And yeah, so that would be my input.
Thanks, Beth. Jan?
I was gonna say that coming into this, I was kind of interested in the idea of going a little bit wider, but after hearing, this, what Beth was saying, hearing that earlier on, slowing people down, but also just listening to the council last night, I heard council members that are really worried about the cost of all of this work. So if we can do something to save money and go with narrower, then I'm all for it.
Jan, Heather?
I would say, given the recommendations that came from the Beaver committee with respect to the width, it was very specific around making it wider where there were points of interest. So at the classroom, things like that. So to Beth's point, this is just trail connectivity, right? And I think it would make sense to keep these areas at the smaller width.
Thank you. So committee, then I guess, do we have a general consensus to keep, that the recommendation is that it remain at 1.2? Or is there anyone that would like to speak to 1.5? And if there is at all, that's perfectly fine. We can have somebody make a motion and we can call it to question. But if there's a general consensus, there probably isn't a need to do that. So any opposition to making a recommendation that it remains at 1.2 meters wide? I don't see any opposition to that, so
Yeah.
we'll make that one of the recommendations from the committee then, is that it's 1.2, yeah?
So I'm just gonna go ahead and say, like, I appreciate that you've come to us with all this information, like, there's a lot of homework here that we didn't have to do, so thanks. I can't think, I'm trying to come up with some totally other section that I could say, hey, this needs work, and you're not recommending it. I can't, other than the Happy East section of the upper Happy Creek, where the fallen, between the leaning tree and the main, but I'm told that that was fixed already, so in my opinion, I'm good to go with with scenario 1 and 2 being recommended at 1.2. Thanks.
Okay. Great. My only question before we go ahead with the recommendation, in scenario 2, if that section gets repaired, replaced now, and it's A1 top notch now, how does that affect access to get to, say, the dock area or the section that runs along the lake shore, or the connector section that goes from the lake shore up to, like, say, at the end of the red line there?
Like in the future to do work. in the
Yeah, for
future.
future access, so that to replace the section that runs along the lake shore to do work on the dock. Once that's in and built, you don't really want to be taking it out to get access back down to the lake shore, so.
Yeah, no, that's correct. That's maybe a head breaker in itself. Of course, there is an opportunity to get through the bush when you say, okay, I have a new project, a new way of getting there, to take trees out, to get somewhere if you really need and want to. But I'm with you in the sense of, if you build something now, it's going to stay there for a longer period of time. We cannot drive equipment on top of the boardwalk, so that's too bad. So
You pretty much nail yourself to having to do it when there's ice, when there's proper ice conditions.
Yeah. And that's,
Yeah.
and that's fine, as long as it's not going to be completely landlocked, that there's no way to access that anymore because there's newly constructed boardwalk in the way.
like
It's fine, it's not a huge
circle.
concern.
Yeah.
No, okay, I'm fine with it. Doug?
Sorry, that bit about there about the 1.2 versus 1.5 length, I probably may have missed the boat there, and if I did, no big deal, but I just had a dissenting thought that just came to me. Just that piece there, section 1, just because it is a relatively short length compared to the rest. If you scroll up there. Yeah, just the bit in red, just because it is a relatively very short length, and it is at the junction of 2 trails. When you kind of walk on that bit there, you often do kind of run into someone, right? Because you have basically twice the odds of running into someone at that little section in red than you do anywhere else, just because you got folks coming from the apartment, and then you also got people coming from the south side there, or sorry, the south side. So I was wondering if there were an area that could be 1.5, that would be it.
It's already planned to be 1.5.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, there
That
we
section is 1.5.
never.
No,
know.
but that's good though, because I appreciate that clarification, because the
Yeah.
recommendation we just gave was to make everything 1.2.
Oh, no, yeah.
So if that piece is gonna stay 1.5, yeah, I agree with you too. I think that if there is a piece to stay 1.5, it should be that piece.
Yeah, I was responding to Hans saying, we'll go from 1.5, and then he was asking, do we go to 1.2 or 1.5? And I was saying 1.2.
This way,
Just for clarity with our motions here, I didn't want to accept the general consensus of 1.2 because it's too general and could be taken as applying to the whole border, like we just saw.
okay.
So can we deal with yes or no on section 1 and 2 first, and then the following motion can speak to the widths of those sections, if that's okay.
Sure. So what are we calling section 1? Sorry, Doug, did you still have a question or, okay.
No.
Section 1, Ms. White?
The red?
Okay, so that's the red in scenario 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So consensus of the group, and my understanding is that we kind of want to keep that 1.5. Is there opposition to that? And if so, we can have a discussion and call it to question. Okay, so if everybody's okay with it, that'll stay 1.5. I see no one in opposition, no one wants to speak to it, so that section would be 1.5, and then we want to do section 2, which would be the blue section.
Hans, what section is that?
I
It's
would
a new
almost,
section.
I want to say the extension of section 1.
That's the blue.
That'll be
That's-
section 1A, blue.
Okay, 1A blue
Okay, so
and
one-
black. So
so
it's
one-
blue plus black.
Okay, so the blue and black sections in scenario 1 then, the previous consensus was to go with a 1.2 meter width. Everybody's okay with that? Okay, so that'll form part of the recommendation then. That section, the blue and black, will remain at 1.2 meter wide. Okay. What else do we need, administration?
Scenario 3,
So for scenario
scenario 2, section 4. Sorry.
yes or no on scenario 2?
So committee, yes or no on scenario 2? You want to tackle that as well? Yep.
Reasonable. Yep.
Yep, okay, I don't see anybody shaking their head no, and the funding's available, budget's available, so should be okay. Any questions regarding the width of that? Was it supposed to be all 1.2 or what, 1.5?
Right.
So that'll all remain at 1.2 then? Okay. So committee's all okay with that then? All of scenario 2, the red, the blue, and the black will be reconstructed at a 1.2 meter width. Is there any opposition to that or any comments or questions?
Sorry, guys, can I speak to this?
Sorry,
This is
who's
Trevor.
that? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Trevor.
I just wanted to suggest we go with 1.5, being that's the main town trail and it's the connector. The rest of the trail is quite wide. You oftentimes have lots of cross traffic in that area. So I would like to suggest we go with 1.5 for all of scenario 2, but if the rest of the committee is good with 1.2, then I'll forever hold my peace.
Oh, no,
Thanks.
that's okay. We just kind of seek the general consensus to try and expedite things, but if there's, yeah, differing opinions, that's fine. We can talk it out and then we'll call it to a vote. So, okay, so there is a suggestion to widen that out to 1.5 then. So any other discussion around that?
Sorry, is he talking,
Yeah.
is Trevor talking about the blue and the stuff that's on the old town trail, or is he talking about the red?
So Trevor, my understanding was in scenario 2, the red, the blue, and the black would be widened out to 1.5. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, that's what I would like to suggest. All of scenario 2, red, blue, and black would be 1.5.
If I might.
Yeah,
As much as I appreciate it, I would probably vote against it just because I'm one of those people that ride my bike on that and I've never had an issue. And even that, the stuff, the blue and the black, if you really need to, you can get off at most locations. It's not that wet. And I have to let people get by. So just, and again, I'm looking at cost savings here.
this way.
Just a question, so mostly to Jan really, or Hans, you guys are back there quite often. This section here, where the three kind of, well, I guess this is technically like one trail, but you know, people are coming from this direction, coming from this direction, then do we have, like, should it widen to 1.5 here and kind of, is that already happening, Hans?
No, it's an intersection, so it's a cross. Only the cross is itself, of course, has a little bit of sliding corners, but not much. So no, it's not wider really in that section. It's 1.2 connected from 4 ways.
Because that was one of the points from the Beaver committee as well, is, you know, for those bikers, while we may not want them directly over the water, we do want to accommodate that group as one of our larger stakeholders. So we did talk about creating different points along the way where you can switch out a stroller, you know, like people can get by each other or things like that. So that to me seems like, to Trevor's point, a location where, though we may not consider the whole thing at 1.5, maybe that's an opportunity to create one of those nodes where people can not have to step off.
You did direct it at,
Beth, did you have your hand up?
I just, like, I've never had a problem at that intersection, like, because you can go for a ways. It's not just a T or anything, it actually carries on.
Yeah,
I would say, because you were at.
Yeah.
I agree with Beth. What I find a lot of times is people are approaching that and they see that everyone's approaching and people just kind of pick one side and wait and they make the pass. A bike can make the corner. And also, and I'm sure this is going to come up over our time together. The bikers should know, if they know the proper etiquette, they should know that they are the ones to get off their bike and even put it on one wheel to give lots of room. And it's not hard, it's really easy. So I don't think we should be worrying about the bikers so much.
I'd speak to it quickly too. Lots of the discussion last night around the bridge ramps and stuff, it did focus on the expense. This is a pretty expensive proposition to rebuild sections of Boardwalk. So I do agree, anything that we could do to try and minimize that expense while still maintaining the experience and the functionality of it, we should try to do. So I would support keeping it at 1.2 as well. So, Doug?
Well, my opinion would just be it's kind of late in the game for a scope change. So in terms of just trying to get this thing finished, keeping it to whatever it is right now is generally what I would steward toward.
So because there was some discussion and some different opinions on that, if we could get somebody to move for preferred width, and then we could vote on it.
Well, I don't actually get a vote, so I was just asking a question, so it's really.
Oh, sorry, did you have a question?
No, my question was to Jan, because I'm not typically in that section, so I was
Okay,
just wondering
okay.
about the traffic.
Okay, yep. Yeah, but Trevor won.
Yeah,
He
sure.
he made the request for 1.5. So if somebody could make a motion for preferred width.
I'll make a motion preferred width for scenario 2, remain at 1.2 for the red, blue, and black sections.
Okay, just want to make sure everybody heard Beth moved for all of scenario 2 to remain at 1.2 meters width. Is there any discussion on that before we call it the question? Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Trevor, if you can hear us, how do you vote on that?
I'm in favor.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so the recommendation for scenario 2 then will be all of it to remain at 1.2 meters wide. Okay, committee, is there anything else on this, Doug?
Yeah, I don't know if this needs to be a motion or if it's just a discussion item, but when I read scenario 1 and 2, both of them have red, blue, black sections, and there's and I think I understand exactly what Hans was coming to because we had this discussion, but in terms of how it's presented in the report, there's wording that's not quite clear as to is in particular to the blue section as to what is being done as part of this extended work scope as a workaround. So as an example, scenario 2, the extended section black line to the east is on sleepers and still in fairly good shape, though the first part blue line would benefit to be on piles to prolong lifeline. So my understanding based on the discussion is that what the contractor will be doing is that they will be replacing piles with screw piles in the blue section, and then they will be replacing sleepers and decking as required in the black section. But just the wording in that scenario 2 is maybe a little bit vaguer. So I don't know if that's something that could be improved on.
Yeah, I can respond to that. Yeah, thanks, Doug, for mentioning that. For sure, we'll do that when we address the scope change with the contractor to say what is in, what is out. So I appreciate that saying that. That is not a, let's say, a given for him to decide yay or nay. But like I said, the pile amount should be enough to at least address a section of that blue in scenario 2 as well to be done on piles. Yeah, so
Okay.
thank you. We'll beef that up.
Okay, Good then, Doug?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, committee, anything further?
Oh, sorry, I did have one other comment. I don't want to be too critical with a comment like this, but it does seem a bit concerning how we have, a grant being issued and a contract then signed and, because of timelines and such, now it seems like the town is in a position of potential financial penalty without having to pivot and come up with a plan B. And a lot of fantastic work was put into coming up with a plan B at short notice. But just in terms of doing a look back, is that something the administration had planned to kind of look at the timelines and say, hey, how did we get here? And on future projects, how do we kind of avoid that? And obviously it was caused by the weather, right? But in terms of having enough notice where something like scenario 4, where you'd have to be looking at terminating a contract, is not something that needs to be looked at. And I don't want me to be critical with that. It was just, just in transparency, having to look back on timelines and things like this.
Yeah, and before I go to Ms. Way about that too, yeah, if something like scenario 4 were to come into effect, some way that the town could be protected from a civil action, because if in this scenario, if it was not possible at all, it wouldn't have been through any fault of the town. It's weather related. So I'll go to Ms. Way.
Yeah, thanks, Councilor Stashik. Additionally to that, with respect to what could be done under scenario 4 and having those plans ready to go for the Maxwell Lake area and the Beaver Boardwalk, that's part of the work that this group will do, right? So it's unfortunate that we're just at the beginning when we're coming up against this huge hurdle. But a year and a half from now, when we have those plans ready to go on what we'd like to see next and those areas are prioritized, it would be much easier to respond to a scenario such as this. And then with respect to the other projects, being able to transfer it to another department, they may have some, but 300,000 in infrastructure services is really not that much money. That's it.
So even if there was another project that was shovel ready though, that doesn't negate the possibility of civil action from the part of the contractor, because they're all set up and ready to go and have a contractor.
100%.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and that's why I do appreciate what Doug is saying, of course. And with the knowledge that especially in, let's say, weather depending projects in these kind of situations, yeah, they need to nail down something in the sense of what if scenarios. And we're going to see that more and more coming our way. And it's a good thing to discuss that here with the group, but it's for sure for admin to take that into consideration.
Sure.
Hard lessons to learn.
Tom?
Just a comment. I guess with the terms of reference, we will be going over capital expenditures, so we're probably going to identify some of those opportunities as we move ahead. Just to echo Heather's comments about the timing being early enough in the process, we're not as prepared as we can be, but the process still has to work through for us to get there. That's
For sure. Thanks, Tom. Hey, committee, is there anything else that we want to address on this matter? And I'm not trying to rush things. We have lots of time, so if there is, feel free to bring it forward. Okay, look to admin that you have everything you need regarding the Boardwalk Rehabilitation Project amendment.
Yes, I do, and I really appreciate you guys coming to get us this fast. It really helps, and of course we know that this will help council as well. So it just shows how important this is, and council will be thankful, most likely, for this as well, as much as I am. So thank you.
Okay, good. Heather, you're good too. Okay. Okay, so that brings us information items. I don't believe we have any on today's agenda. No, my apologies. Discussion item first, committee vacancies. So yeah, I'm sure we all saw the email that Vivian resigned from the committee, which is unfortunate, but it does leave a question and conversation now about what to do with Vivian's vacancy. And additionally, the other vacancies that have been since the committee was formed. I believe there's 3.
Right, because we didn't fill 2 of the positions.
Yeah,
So
there's
now
the
that's 3.
Aboriginal or Indigenous persons representative, youth, youth representative, and Vivian's. And what was Vivian?
I haven't had a chance to go back to the files and take a peek, but I can certainly circulate that in an email. I just wanted to have the discussion today so that I can get it in the queue if it does need to be advertised, go back to council, et cetera, et cetera.
So I guess the question for the committee then, council usually does committee appointments in the fall, in October, when they do their organizational meeting, but it doesn't have to be. Appointments can happen at any time. So I guess the question is to the committee is, do we feel that those vacant positions should be filled sooner than later? And if so, that's going to need a recommendation to council, that council advertise for those positions and try to appoint people to them? Or does committee think that we're okay to just carry on towards, I think advertising for committees happens in the summertime and then appointments usually in the fall?
Correct, if we're staying on the typical schedule,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's just a question to the committee, and thoughts and opinions either way is fine. If we want to try and fill those, that can be a recommendation. If we're okay to wait till next fall to try and fill them, that's okay too. So committee thoughts?
Just one point of clarity for
Yep.
everyone's understanding, we lose one more, we're in a little bit of trouble, but currently we still need quorum. So we are within our rights to continue doing business as we currently sit. Just wanted to make sure everybody understood that we're not under any pressure necessarily to add anyone until next year with these vacancies. But of course we can't if the group wants to.
Okay, so before we do discuss it, then I would have a clarifying question. I thought the terms of reference said that the committee could continue to function even if there were vacancies, and all quorum was a majority of current members. Is it not?
Correct, but we get to such a low number of the total positions that we're supposed to have, we're not meeting our quorum.
You better get the terms of reference then. 'cause
Yeah, I
that
don't
doesn't-
think
Is it
the
not
terms
read
of,
that way?
I don't think the terms of reference defined a minimum number of committee members. It's just that quorum is a majority of the current
But who's
members.
left? I might be thinking of the council.
'Cause I think
bylaw that we
it-
all-
It specifically says that the committee can continue to function and do its work even if there are vacancies.
That's even easier then. But being under the council procedure bylaw, is that one different? Is that one supersedes ours? We all follow to that. I can double check.
Yeah, we should.
Do you know how many members we would be off if that would be the case? Is that one or two? If
Right now.
your scenario is the right one? Are we one or two people off of that threshold?
Oh, we have 3 missing right now. We have a total of 9, I think. So we have to lose. I'll pull it up. while
One
you guys
more, okay.
discuss.
In your scenario, one more okay, two would be wrong.
Yeah.
In your scenario,
Doesn't
we're
matter.
not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Yes,
whatever.
okay.
And I don't think council procedure bylaw would speak to that. Council's makeup's defined at 7 people, but there might be something in the boards and committees bylaw.
Yeah, that's.
So we should, yeah, okay. Yeah, we should check that. Okay, we'll get that. So we know that for next meeting, but in the meantime, though, we can still talk about what we want to do with those vacant positions. Anybody have any thoughts?
Were there any, Vivian applied under a certain category? I can't remember which, she lived on College or whatever. Was there anyone else that applied?
At the time, no, but over the course of the weekend, I did receive one application. I don't know if it's for her spot. I still have to go back and check Vivian's file to see if it turns out to be exactly for her spot.
I think there was another applicant not too long ago too, was there not? But she didn't fit into any of the categories that were currently open. She didn't fit in the Indigenous or youth.
Is that Rachel?
So there
I'll go back and
might
check that
be a couple. But anyways, if it's important to the committee to fill it in, we likely should make a recommendation to advertise, and then council can appoint some new members. So I'm gonna go to Tom and then Young.
The terms of reference under composition 3.2 says if one or more of the above representative roles is not filled, the BBOC may continue to conduct its business and will seek to fill the position via council appointment as soon as possible. That's what I got.
Okay. Jan?
So I'd like to make a motion that we try to fill her position and all positions as fast as possible. I think it's important.
Okay, great. So we have a proposed recommendation committee to try and get those positions filled. Is there any comment or discussion on that? Thoughts, ideas, opinions? Beth?
I think it's important to do it sooner. There's a lot of background here, so the sooner we get somebody on, the more they can come up to speed. Because I think our whole committee is still learning about what we need to be doing and our roles and everything. So I think sooner is better.
Thanks, Beth. Kevin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm certainly in favor of the motion, but I just wanted to say that if we do that, maybe for the specific roles of the indigenous person, that maybe some kind of a reach out happen from town to, I don't know, the Friendship Center, to maybe try and find a rep from their organization. And a similar action, I don't know if there's a youth committee in town that already has engaged youth, but just reaching out directly to either that or the high school's student council, whoever they are. I guess there's 2 high schools, so you'd have to maybe offer it to both and see who comes first. But
Yeah, that's a great idea, Kevin. There is a youth council actually that we could reach out to the youth council, and even if they weren't directly interested, they could get that out to the schools though and try and get us a youth representative as well. So yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Jan?
yeah,
No, I was going to suggest that you use the youth council.
Okay. Hey, committee, any other thoughts, ideas, comments? Okay, so we'll call to question then that committee recommend that the vacant positions are filled as soon as possible. All those in favor? Okay, Trevor, are you listening? Are you in favor? Well, even if you're not, it's still passed. So that'll be a recommendation then too. Yep. Okay, anything else on committee vacancies before we move on then? Okay, on information items, I don't believe there is anything this meeting. Next meeting date, just as, oh, yep, Jan.
I've got an information meeting point.
Okay, yep, go ahead.
Hans and I are going to get together next week and talk about mapping, and we're going to figure out a way that we can all have maps that help us with our communications over the next couple of years.
Cool.
He didn't know that until just now, but
Oh, he kind of hinted on it, and he's the mapping guy guru. Anyways, so thank you.
Awesome.
because it does kind of frustrate me when we're sitting here and like section A, scenario 1, and if there's just a way that we can have some blank maps and maybe some maps where things are labeled so that we can all start using the same terminology and other ideas.
Any kind of timeline on that?
Oh, it shouldn't take long.
Perfect. Awesome. Tom?
It's a great idea. I've been sort of trying to go to the maps that we presented. Was it last meeting where we had the A and B and all the rest?
Yeah.
Marked down. And I don't know if it has to be more elaborate than that, and I'm sure Jan can make a much nicer map anyway.
No, I actually called him to see if he had that in a format that I could take, but he doesn't. So we'll have to recreate things, but I can use the same terminology and the same areas.
I got a suggestion. If you guys are mapping it out, it would be very interesting to find out, especially the areas in the forest, which areas are piled and which ones are not piled. If you guys can get a distance breakdown, because the cost to repair is significantly different between piled and non-piled sections. So if that's something that could be broken out,
Yeah,
very
it sounds like we can do that. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Great. Okay, well, that's cool. Thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. Any other comments on the out of the blue information item? Nope. Okay, seeing none, next meeting date, just a reminder, it's scheduled for Wednesday, March 9th, 4 o'clock. Yeah, if there's, oh, Ms. Wade.
Those invites have already been sent out. If you didn't receive them, let me know. I am going in advance and putting, I know some of you are missing them. If you're accepting the meeting invite on your phone, sometimes the attachments get lost. So try and save that one for when you get home and can get to an actual computer or tablet. If you're having trouble though, I think Kevin reached out to me today and I was just able to fire it off to him separately. So it's already been set up. If you're having any issues, do let me know.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else on next meeting date? Oh, okay. So the only other matter is adjournment.
Oh, just for matter of point, when do you want agenda items? Like, when's the latest? Like a week before? Or do we, I can't remember. Do you send out an email asking for?
Yeah, so there was a motion actually from a previous meeting in January that I wasn't at. But theoretically, our meetings are on Wednesdays, so I'd like to be sending out the agenda by Friday. So if
Okay.
there's questions, those have to come in Monday so that Hans and I, Chad, can figure it all out before Wednesday, and then I'll get something out by, I don't know, maybe 4 o'clock on Friday.
So, and as chair, I'm gonna start trying to connect with Ms. Wade before the agenda is prepared to make sure everything's captured, and if there's any requests that filter through me, I can make sure that they're on the agenda too, and that we're addressing things in a timely way so we can stay on top of everything the committee wants to do. So speaking of that, I need to talk to you next week sometime.
Super.
Okay. Okay, anything further on next meeting? Okay, so somebody motion to adjourn. Jan moves to adjourn. All those in favor?
Thanks,
And
Heather.
we're adjourned. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. That was awesome. Appreciate that you guys could all get here so quick. Thank you very much. Awesome. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, Chad.